Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and right now we're going to continue with our requests. So what we did in the previous video is we saw some of the different examples of using actual requests, such as defining your custom authentication, such as for example posting multiple encoded files, such as basically chunk encoded requests. You remember that generate with the yield function that we send to the actual server. Well, right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Json library and also streaming requests. Okay, so open up your idle right here. I will just navigate to my idle and we will import two libraries. One of them is the Json library and one of them is the request library. So just type here import Json and import requests. Those are the two libraries that we will need. And we're simply going to create a GET request with specifying the stream parameter to be equal to true. So r equals requests.get, open and close normal brackets, specify the actual link, and we will go to the httpbin.org website. So just type here https http://httpbin.org/stream/20. And right after it, you need to specify the stream parameter to be equal to true. So stream equals true. Press here enter. We can see it executed correctly. And now we're going to use the iterlines function, where that function allows us to easily iterate over streaming APIs, such as the Twitter streaming API, for example. Now, it can only be used once we actually set the stream parameter to be equal to true, and then it will iterate over the response of the server with iterlines. Okay, so all we need to do is specify the actual for loop in order to read all of those lines. So for line in r.iterlines, iter_lines, open and close brackets, put column, press here enter. And now we are going to filter out keep alive and new line. So basically if line, so if line exists, we need to decode the actual line. So decoded line, decoded_line will be equal to line.decode. And the actual encoding that it is used is the UTF-8. So we'll specify to decode with the UTF-8. Make sure to specify it just like this. And all we want to do afterwards is we want to print the decoded line, but we need to use the json.loads function onto it first. So in order to do that, we will just simply use a function within a function. So print, and in there we will specify JSON loads. And what we want to do with the JSON loads is we want to actually load the decoded_line. Press here enter, and you will see all of the lines that we were able to get. As we can see right here, those are our headers. As we can see, the Python requests is where the actual request is coming from. The host that we want to visit is httpbin.org. This is the IP address right here. We can see accept encoding is enabled, JZip. Let me just find another R agent. Okay, the R agent is from where are the actual requests coming from, and we already saw those are Python requests. So we successfully were able to decode with the UTF-8 and also print the JSON loads or the JSON format of the decoded line. Now, when we are using the decoded Unicode to be equal to true, with this actual function iterlines or itercontent, because that function also exists, you will want to provide a fallback encoding in the event that this server doesn't provide one. So for example, we can do something like this. So let me just restart this real quick. Open up the idle, import JSON and import requests. And we will perform the actual request to the same website or the same page. So r equals requests.get. And there we will specify the same website. So https://httpbin.org/stream/20. And comma stream equals to true, because we know that we must have this in order to be able to perform the iterlines function. Press here enter, we perform the get request successfully, and all we want to do is check for the encoding. And in order to check for the encoding, we can access the encoding parameter with the if statement. So if r.encoding, and we want to see if there is anything. So is none. If the encoding is none, what we want to do is we want to set the encoding to be equal to UTF-8. So in order to do that, we can simply just type here if our encoding is none, then r.encoding is equal to UTF-8. Once you specify that, press here enter, press enter once again, and right now we can actually continue with the similar thing that we did in the previous actual example, which is for line in r.iter_lines. We will specify the code underscore Unicode to be equal to true. Also don't forget the column at the end because we are using the for loop. Press here enter, and now we check for the line. So if line, then we want to print the JSON data of that line. So JSON underscore, or pardon me, dot loads from the line. And you will see that we get printed out the exact same thing. Now, and one warning that you might want to consider is that the iter lines is not retrent safe. Basically, calling this method multiple times can cause some of the received data to actually get lost or to be lost. Now, in case you need to call it from multiple places, use the resulting iterator object instead. Now, basically, what I mean by that is that you want to first save the first line for later, or you will just skip it, and then afterwards you want to enter the for loop. Okay? And basically that would be all about the actual JSON library that we'll use in order to actually print our own request in the JSON format. We also use the encoding, we also use the new function that we haven't encountered before, which is this iterLines function. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at using proxies in the actual Python requests library. So go right here. If you need to use a proxy, you can configure individual requests with the proxies argument to any request method. So all we need to do is first of all import requests, and you need to specify your own proxies. It is rather simple. So proxies can be equal, and then right here specify for the HTTP and HTTPS. So let's say HTTP. And you can simply just add any proxy you want. For example, HTTP, column // and then you specify the IP address that you want to use for the proxy. It doesn't even matter. Now, if you have one, specify it. If you don't have one, you don't need to specify it. And also HTTPS, you can set the same thing right here. Doesn't even matter, just type some IP address of your actual proxies, and then let me just type right here my router's IP address. Press here enter. These are our proxies. Of course I just use my router, and if you have a proxy, you use that one instead. And all you need to do afterwards is simply just specify requests.get and specify HTTP some website with the parameter proxies to be equal to your specified proxies that you specified upwards. Press here enter, and you get the response 401. Now that response 401 is because of my proxy, so don't really worry about that. You can also configure proxies by setting the environment variables HTTP proxy and HTTPS proxy. So basically you can set the variable, for example, HTTP_proxy, which is defined like this. And then you simply just specify the same link that you specified right here. Okay? You can do the same thing for the actual HTTPS, just add S right here and specify your proxy. And then afterwards all you need to do is just perform a simple GET request without even specifying the proxies right there in the brackets. Okay? So that is another usage of the proxy. Now, if you want to also include the socks in addition to basic HTTP proxies, requests also can support using SOX protocol. This is an optional feature basically that requires that additional third-party libraries to be installed before we actually use them. Okay? Now you can get the actual dependencies for this feature from pip. Now, our usual pip, we need to open up our command prompt, navigate to our Python 3 scripts library where we can actually access pip. So cd app data, cd local, cd programs. Let me just see where it is. cd python, cd python 37 and cd scripts. There, I will clear the screen. There we can actually install the required requests or SOX library. In order to do that, you can simply specify pip install requests, and after request you open and close the square brackets, and in between the square brackets you specify SOX. Press here enter, and what pip will do is it will install the desired library for you. Okay, as it says right here, successfully installed PySOX. Now once you've installed those dependencies, using a SOX proxy is just as easy as using the HTTP one. So simply just specify, the syntax would look something like this. Instead of specifying proxies like this right here, you can specify them with using SOX, something like this. So proxies equal, open and close big brackets, and then specify in the dictionary like format, so HTTP, then another single quote, SOX5, because SOX5 is mostly what you're going to use, then user, column pass, at host, and then column port. Now that you also specify for the HTTPS, so you can do something like that, and then HTTPS proxy would be equal, or would belong to the SOX5, column / user, column pass, at host, and then column port. Basically, this would be something, this would be how you would define the actual proxies using the shim SOX5. And this SOX5 actually causes the DNS resolution to happen on the client rather than on the proxy server. Okay, so basically that would be about it for the actual proxies. Now, what we actually want to take a look at as well is the HTTP verbs. Now, requests provide access to almost the full range of HTTP verbs, such as get, options, head, post, put, patch, and delete. We only saw the get and the post by now. Now, we will begin with the verb most commonly used, which is get HTTP. Get is a method that returns a resource from a given URL. We already know that. Now, as a result, it is a verb you ought to use when attempting to retrieve data from a web location. An example of usage would be attempting to get information about a specific page from GitHub, let's say. Suppose we wanted to actually create a request, we would do it simply just like this. So let me just show you. First of all, we need to import the actual requests. We already saw how we can do that, import requests, and then you simply just create the requests.get. Now we didn't really need to import it right here because we already did import it right here, but doesn't even matter. And then you would simply just specify the URL that you want to get. Okay? Now, you can also confirm whether a certain page responded correctly. So let us create an actual request, so request.get, and then specify https twitter.com. Press here enter. We perform the request, and we should now confirm whether the Twitter responded correctly. Now, if it has, we want to work out what type of content it is. Now, we can do that by simply specifying an if statement that will say if r.statuscode or status_code equals to requests.codes.ok. Press here enter, and if it is equal, then we'll print from the response headers, we'll print the actual content type parameters of content dash type. Press here enter, and we will see text HTML charset UTF-8, and we know that the encoding is UTF-8. Okay, now, so we know that by now, we know that the actual page is HTML. Now, let's say we also want to get a request to the actual GitHub, so request.get, in between the brackets, we'll specify https column //api.github.com. Press here enter, request performed successfully, and we want to print the r.headers content type. Press here enter, and we get a similar response. Just right here we can see that the encoding is UTF-8, but the application is JSON. So now, right now we know that the GitHub returns JSON data. So right now we can use the r.json method to parse it into Python objects. So you can specify something like this: data will be equal to r.json. Press here enter right here, and you can simply just print, because the JSON data format is actually really similar to the actual Python dictionaries. You can simply just print data.keys. We know that there are keys in the Python dictionary. Press here enter, and you will see a bunch of the results right here, which are the actual keys. Now we can also print if we are looking for something. Let's say we want to print open and close brackets, then print data, and in these square brackets we can specify that it is Unicode, then basically specify user_search_URL. What I actually specified right here is just the last example in the keys that we specified with this function. I just typed the last example. You can use any other example you want. So let's say we take a different one, such as, for example, team_URL. Press here enter, and you will see its link. Okay, you can also try different ones if you want to, but that would be basically about it for now. Now, the next thing that we can take a look at is the options verb to see what kinds of HTTP methods are supported on the URL we just used. So basically, for example, let's say verbs equal requests dot options, which is another HTTP word, and we will simply specify r.url, which is the link that we simply searched. Press here enter, and verbs.statuscode should return a 500. Oops. Oh, okay. The status code returned 204. Basically, what this actually means, or what I think it means, is that the actual GitHub doesn't really implement the options method in it, and therefore we can't really use it. If they did enable it, however, we should be able to actually get back the available options that we can use on a certain website. So let's try a different one, such as, for example, verbs equal requests dot options, and we'll specify this URL, so HTTP, and then this one. Press here enter. Okay, we perform the actual request, and let's see, verbs.headers, we will access the headers as before, and then we will simply just type here allow. Or let's try with the verb.statuscode for some reason. Okay, verbs.statuscode 200. Okay, so we got the 200. Let me just try verbs.headers. Okay, so these are our actual headers. Let me just see where the actual response is. Weird, it's not here. Well, doesn't even matter. That's how you can actually access the options. Therefore, you need to use the verbs.headers allow. Let me just check it out. Self.start. Yeah, never mind. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to look at, this options thing actually doesn't really matter that much. I thought that with this actual function we can actually retrieve our available options with the certain website, but it looks like we can't. But what we can do is we can simply perform the get and post request. We know that those two actually work every time, but that would be about it for the actual basic HTTP verbs. Now you can try different ones as well if you want to, but also another thing that you should know is about the custom verbs. Now from time to time you may be working with a server that for whatever reason allows use or even requires use of HTTP verbs not covered above. Which I mean is we not covered the get, the post, the options. One example of this would be the mkey call method some web dev servers use. Basically those actual can also be used with the request library. These make use of the built-in request method. For example, let's say we have r equal requests.request, and then you would simply specify if the actual server uses, you would specify mk call and then comma URL and then the data equals data if there is any data to actually send to the server. That is the syntax, so that is also something you can do. And basically that would be about it for this tutorial. Now we took a look at a lot of stuff actually. We took a look at the different verbs that the HTTP protocols use. We took a look at the encoding. We changed the encoding. We also took a look at the JSON library and also printing the data in JSON format. So that would be about it for this actual request library, and we will continue coding in the next section. So hope I see you there and take care. Bye.